Today I'm going to show you how to divide fractions using a common denominator model. Let's start with a simple example. We'll do 1/2 divided by 1/4. To start your model, we are going to make two rectangles. And for the sake of this activity, we're going to call these rectangles buildings. You want to try and make sure that they're as close in shape as possible. So you think about when you're constructing a building, what needs to come first, floors or the rooms? Well, the floors need to come first. So we are going to use our first denominator to make our floors in our buildings. So I'm going to make 2 floors here by drawing one line in the middle, and I'm going to make 2 floors here by drawing another line in the middle. Now using the second denominator, we are going to make the rooms on each floor. So I'm going to make 4 rooms on each floor in the first building by making 4 columns, and then I'm going to make 4 columns in the second building. Using a highlighter tool, I'm going to highlight each fraction in its respective building. So for 1/2, I'm going to take the first building and highlight 1/2 of it. I've highlighted 1/2 of the first building. Now I'm going to look at 1/4, and I'm going to highlight 1/4 of the second building. I made this smaller so I could remind you of something. When we have a division expression, our first number is called our dividend. And we divide the dividend by the divisor. Another piece of information, if you recall, is the parts of a fraction. We have the numerator, and we have the denominator. The way that I like to think of fractions is as little mini division problems. So if our fraction right here is a mini division problem, then that would mean that our numerator is in fact the dividend, while our denominator is our divisor. I'm going to go ahead and make some space here, so I'm going to move this up to the top. So I'm going to shrink that a little bit more. It's there. Now I have lots of room. Looking at our expression, we agree that 1/2 is the dividend and 1/4 is the divisor. We also agree that this rectangle represents 1/2 and this rectangle represents 1/4. Now what we can do is use the rooms from each rectangle to make a new fraction. So I'm going to make my fraction bar, and I'm going to look at my first building, and I'm going to count up the rooms in that building. And since this building is the dividend, and the dividend is the same as the numerator, I'm going to put that number of rooms in my numerator. So this number is 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 1 row of 4 rooms. Now in my next building, this is the divisor, which is equal to the denominator. So I'm going to put this number of rooms in my denominator, and I have 1 column of 2. So it's 2. Now all that's left to do in our problem is to divide and simplify. So we have 4 divided by 2, or 4 over 2, which is the same as 4 divided by 2, and that equals 2. So you can say that 1/2 divided by 1/4 is equal to 2. Let's try another one. let's try 2/3 divided by 1/4. The first thing I do is make my buildings. We're going to try and make them the same size. And then I'm going to use my first denominator to make the floors, because we always start a building with the floors. So we're going to split each building into 3 floors by drawing 2 lines. And then I'm going to make my rooms using my second denominator. So I'm going to make 4 rooms on each floor by drawing 3 lines vertically. Next comes the highlighting. I'm going to highlight 2/3 on my first building, so I can see that I have 1, 2, 3 rows. I'm going to highlight 2 out of the 3 rows or floors. 1, 2. And in the next building, I need to highlight 1 room on each floor to show 1/4 of the building. Now the neat thing that we've done here is that we have just made a common denominator. If you notice, in each of your buildings, since you have 3 rows and 4 columns, you have 12 total rooms. 12 happens to be a common denominator of 3 and 4. To keep going, we're going to remember that our first building is our numerator, since it represents the dividend, which is also the numerator. And our second building is going to be our denominator, since it represents the divisor, which is also the denominator. Numerator, denominator. So, in our numerator, let's see how many rooms we have highlighted. We have 2 rows of 4 rooms each. So we have 8 total rooms highlighted in our numerator. And in our denominator, we have 1 column of 3 rows. So we have 3 total rows highlighted. Therefore, 2/3 divided by 1/4 is equal to 8/3. What you can do now is simplify. To simplify, all you have to do is see how many times the denominator goes into the numerator, and then write the leftover, keeping the denominator the same. So, 3 goes into 8 2 whole times, and there are 2 pieces out of 3 left over. This also means that 2/3 divided by 1/4 is equal to 2 and 2/3. The last thing we're going to do is I'm going to have you try this example on your own. So if you could please pause the video, try this out on your own, and then when you're ready, play and I'll show you the solution. We're going to go ahead and get started. So we're going to make our 2 buildings as usual, and this time I'm noticing that I'm going to have 10 rooms, and that tells me I need to make wider buildings because it's going to be a lot to try and squeeze in 10 rooms. So I'm going to make my buildings a little wider this time, but again I'm going to keep them the same size. And then I'm going to start with my floors. So I need 5 floors per building. So I'm going to make 4 lines to create 5 rows or floors. I'm going to do that for both. Now we're going to make the rooms per floor. So our rooms are 10. So I like to split things in half first, and then split each half into fifths. That keeps it pretty even. Let's double check here. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 rooms on those floors. And now I'll do the same thing to my second building. And let's double check our work. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good. Now we're ready to highlight each of the buildings. So in the first building, we need to highlight 3/5. So I'm going to look at my floors and I'm going to highlight 3 out of 5 floors. 1, 2, 3 floors. And then in my next building, I'm going to highlight 3/10 of it, or 3 rooms on every floor. There we go. Again, the number of rooms in my first building is going to be my numerator. So I'm drawing the line in my fraction. And I know I have 3 rows of 10 rooms, so it's going to be 30 in my numerator. And then I have 3 columns of 5 floors, so that will be 15. And 30 divided by 15 is 2. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video gave you an understandable way of how to divide fractions using a model. Have a good one.